It is the morning of October 22nd, 1844. You are standing on a cold hillside in upstate New York. You are wearing a white robe. You have no money in your pocket because you threw your wallet into the river yesterday. You have no farm to go back to because you sold the deed last week. You are standing there, freezing, waiting for the sky to rip open. You are waiting for fire. You are waiting for the sound of trumpets. You are waiting for the end of the world. And then nothing happens. A bird chirps. The sun rises, indifferent and slow, just like it did the day before. The clock strikes noon. Then it strikes midnight. The silence that follows isn't peaceful. It is heavy. It is the crushing, suffocating weight of being wrong. This was the great disappointment. But the truly terrifying thing isn't that these people were wrong. It's that throughout human history, we have been wrong about the end of the world thousands of times. And yet we never seem to stop waiting for it. From barnyard animals to Ivy League astrophysicists, the architecture of the apocalypse is always the same. Today, we are going to dissect the anatomy of the end times that never came. We are going to look at the mass hysteria, the broken math, and the psychological wiring that makes us crave our own destruction. Let's dial the clock back to 1806. The location is Leeds, England. The Industrial Revolution is churning. The air is thick with coal smoke, and the local population is gripped by a sudden, terrifying religious fervor. But this message from God didn't come from a burning bush or a thunderclap. It came from a chicken. This is the story of the prophet hen of Leeds. In a time of high anxiety, people were desperate for a sign. They found one in the coop of a woman named Mary Bateman, locally known as the Yorkshire Witch. Her hen began laying eggs that were physically embossed with the words, "Christ is coming." Stop and think about the visceral reaction to that. You are a superstitious laborer in 1806. You see an egg, a biological object, with a divine warning etched into the calcium. It wasn't a metaphor. It was a tactile miracle. The news didn't just spread, it exploded. Pilgrims traveled miles, paying a penny, a day's wages for some, just to stare at this paltry prophet. Bateman, a master manipulator, capitalized on this dread. She sold seals, scraps of paper with the initials JC, as literal tickets to heaven, capitalizing on the fear that the sky was about to fall. It was the perfect grift, selling insurance for an event that would destroy the insurance company. But the reality was far grimier. A skeptic eventually caught Bateman in the act. The miracle was actually torture. She was chemically etching the eggs with corrosive vinegar to burn the message into the shell. And then, in a detail that makes you shudder, forcibly reinserting the eggs back into the hen's body so they could be laid again in front of an audience. The prophet hen wasn't a divine messenger. It was a prop in a cruel theater of manipulation. Bateman wasn't just a fraud. She was dangerous. She was later executed for poisoning a woman with pudding, proving that while she couldn't predict the death of the world, she was perfectly capable of causing the death of individuals. But you might say, that's 1806. Those were uneducated peasants. Surely we can't be tricked that easily today. Well, let me introduce you to the man who used math to break the hearts of thousands. William Miller wasn't a con artist. He was a veteran of the War of 1812, a farmer, and a man obsessed with data. He treated the Bible not just as a holy book, but as a code to be cracked. He locked on to Daniel 8:14. Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Miller applied a day-year principle, turning days into calendar years. He built a timeline, he did the arithmetic, and the numbers told him that the cleansing, the fiery return of Jesus Christ, had a deadline. The window was specific. March 1843 to March 1844. This wasn't a vague feeling. This was presented as objective, mathematical fact. His movement, the Millerites, swelled to over 100,000 people. This wasn't a fringe cult. This was a mass social movement. Farmers left their crops to rot in the fields. Why harvest wheat if the world burns on Tuesday? Store owners simply locked their doors and walked away. When the first date in March passed, the goalposts moved. A disciple named Samuel Snow recalculated. He found the true date, October 22nd, 1844. The energy shifted from anticipation to mania. On the night of the 21st, families huddled together. They sang hymns to drown out the silence. They looked at the sky, interpreting every cloud, every shift in the wind, as the beginning of the end. And then the sun rose on the 23rd. The sheer devastation of that morning is hard to overstate. One follower wrote a sentence that haunts the history of religion. Our fondest hopes and expectations were blasted. We wept and wept till the day dawned. They didn't just lose their faith. They lost their homes, their savings, and their dignity. They were the punchline of a national joke. Miller died broken, but the movement mutated. The cognitive dissonance was too painful to accept, so they rewrote the narrative. They claimed the prophecy was correct, but the event happened in heaven, not on earth. This pivot birthed the Seventh-day Adventist Church, proving that a failed prophecy doesn't kill a movement. It often just forces it to evolve. Fast forward to the late 20th century. We have space travel. We have computers. Surely we are done with doomsday. Wrong. In 1974, the prophecy didn't come from a pulpit. It came from a prestigious publishing house. Two astrophysicists, John Gribben and Stephen Plegeman, released The Jupiter Effect. This is where science was weaponized against the public. They argued that on March 10, 1982, a rare planetary alignment would occur. All the planets would sit on the same side of the sun. They hypothesized this would cause a massive gravitational tug-of-war, triggering solar flares that would slam into Earth's atmosphere, slowing the planet's rotation just enough to trigger catastrophic earthquakes. Specifically, they said Los Angeles would be flattened. This terrified people because it had footnotes. It had charts. It was science. But the actual scientific community was screaming that the math was garbage. The alignment was actually a loose scattering across 95 degrees of the sky. The gravitational pull would be less significant than a 747 flying over your house. But fear moves faster than fact. People panic-sold their homes in California. They stockpiled canned goods. Doomsday parties were scheduled for the night of March 9th. March 10th arrived. The ground did not shake. The sun did not flare. It was a perfectly average Wednesday. The Jupiter Effect was a total bust. Gribben eventually admitted he was wrong, but the damage was done. It proved that if you wrap a doomsday prediction in the language of science, people will buy it just as quickly as they bought the holy eggs in Leeds. Then there are the people who just can't take a hint. Enter Pat Robertson, the televangelist mogul of the 700 Club. For Robertson, doomsday wasn't a one-time event. It was a recurring segment on his show. He predicted the end in 1982. When the world survived 1982, he didn't stop. He predicted tsunamis in 2006. He predicted mass terrorist attacks in 2007. What's fascinating about Robertson is the mechanism of excuse. When 2007 ended without the mass killings he promised, he didn't apologize. He claimed that the prayers of his viewers had averted the disaster. This is a brilliant, if cynical, psychological loop. If the disaster happens, he was right. If the disaster doesn't happen, he was still right, because his followers are powerful enough to stop God's wrath. It creates a closed loop where the prophet can never fail. But for the ultimate example of hubris, we have to talk about Harold Camping. In 2011, this radio host didn't just whisper about the end. He bought billboards. Thousands of them. He spent over $100 million, much of it drained from the life savings of his elderly listeners, to plaster the world with a single date, May 21st, 2011. Camping's vision was cinematic. He described a rolling rapture. At 6:00 p.m. in each time zone, huge earthquakes would kick off the apocalypse, sweeping around the globe like a wave of destruction. The saved would float up. The rest would rot. It was the most marketed end-of-the-world event in human history. Media crews camped out in New Zealand, the first time zone to hit 6:00 p.m., waiting for the fireworks. 6:00 p.m. struck, silence, no earthquake, no floating bodies. Then 6:00 p.m. in Australia, nothing. Then Japan, nothing. The wave of nothingness rolled across the planet. Camping emerged from seclusion days later, flabbergasted. He tried the old spiritual fulfillment pivot. pushing the date to October. But the spell was broken. The tragedy wasn't the failed prediction. It was the aftermath. We saw interviews with followers who had sold everything. Parents who had spent their children's college funds on billboards, now left with nothing but a confused look and an empty bank account. So why? Why do we do this? Why, with a 100% failure rate, do we keep buying the ticket to the end of the world? It's not because we are stupid. It's because we are pattern-seeking animals living in a chaotic world. The apocalypse is seductive because it offers an ending. Real history is messy. It just goes on and on. But an apocalypse gives us a climax. It gives us a finale where the good guys win, the bad guys lose, and the confusion stops. We crave the end because we crave meaning. We want to believe that we are the special generation chosen to see the curtain fall. But the lesson of history, from the chicken in Leeds to the billboards in California, is that the curtain doesn't fall. The sun keeps rising. The rent keeps coming due. And we have to keep living in the world we have, rather than waiting for the one we imagine.